Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and my special guest today is Dillon Holmes, and Dillon is the head of the Well Your World YouTube channel, really dedicating a lot of his attention now to really helping people transition into a healthier lifestyle, plant-based lifestyle, and helping them simplify that transition. And he is also active in his own entrepreneurial work, which we'll get into a little bit, and also on the board of directors of the National Health Association. So I'm really happy. Welcome, Dillon. It's good to see you. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Dr. Sabatino.
Yeah.
Can I call you Frank?
Yeah, Frank is fine. Yeah. So, when I look at people doing the work they're doing like you are, I am always interested in how that journey actually began. So take us back to maybe what the aha moments were for you in your own transition, coming from wherever you were to then embracing plant-based living, that kind of consciousness.
Okay. Well, I first went vegan, actually, after reading the China study, is what it was. And the China study focuses mostly on animal products. So I thought, well, if I take animal products out of my diet, everything's going to be great. So I did that back in 2013. I'm going on 10 years next month, in January, actually. But I spent 3 years eating what was, I found out later, was a junk food vegan diet. Because I just thought, oh, well, take out the animal products, no big deal. Everything else will take care of itself. Of course, I didn't really get much in the way of results. My weight was still going up, my cholesterol was still going up, blood pressure was still going up. I ate, a bag of kettle chips at a time. It was vegan. What's the problem? And it was a few years after that, in 2016, when my mom called me, and she's had a high cholesterol scare. The doctors wanted to put her on statins, and she didn't want to have to go through that. And she said, what do we do? I have to eat like you. I'm like, well, Mom, the way I'm eating isn't really working. I've been touting this whole vegan thing, but it's not really making much of a difference. So then we read Dr. John McDougall's The Starch Solution, and we decided right away. I read that book in like 2 days, I think it was, and we both read it. And we said, okay, let's go ahead and do this a 30-day challenge with ourselves. We're going to clean it up. We're going to take out the processed junk, the oil, most of the salt, the sugar. We never really had much sugar, so that wasn't too hard. But we decided, we were determined to do a really, truly 30-day challenge, give this a shot, and as soon as it doesn't work, because it's obviously not going to, we'll dump it. And 10 days in, I was never going back. I was like, I felt completely different. My energy was through the roof. I mean, my weight, in the first month, I dropped like 15 pounds. I think I dropped like 25 pounds in the 2 months. The first 2 months I did it. And the first month, both my mother and my cholesterol wasn't high. Well, actually, my LDL probably was. But anyway, we both dropped 40 points on our cholesterol. And mine started out a lot lower than hers. We still dropped 40 points. And I was already vegan. So, a lot of people experience their cholesterol drop just by taking the animal products out and still eating garbage. But for me to experience a 40-point drop, and I was down at like 150 after that, was like, okay, this is obvious. And with my feeling better, realizing that weight loss comes from food, not exercise. And these were the realizations that all happened in that first month, 10 days really. And I just then started the proselytizing phase where I tried to change everybody. But that is what happened. My mom ended up being the motivating push to read the starch solution and get more strict. Nobody wants to hear that they've got to take out these things that they're sort of addicted to, not sort of, that they are addicted to. And I finally tried it, and then you realize, oh, okay, I don't want to go back to that anymore. And,
well, one of the most enviable parts of your story, I'm going to tell you honestly, is that the fact that you were able to actually have one of your parents as a partner in that journey. I mean, I think that's fantastic, because one of my disappointments professionally was that in all the years I've done what I've done, I had a mother who was overweight. She had her own diabetes. My father had his own health issues. Not once in all the years that I had centers or lectured had they even ever heard me speak, or ever even came to any of the centers that they could have come to actually get on board with, helping themselves. So when I hear that, I think that's so fantastic that, your mother was kind of part of your motivation, not something that you had to kind of battle against or worry about because they were, dying and you couldn't make some positive input in their lives. I think that's fantastic. It's a great part of that story.
It is unique, and it would have been much harder for me to figure it out without her, because I needed an accountability buddy, and nobody else was going to do it. I mean, this was totally nuts. Nobody I knew ate like this. No, I was only introduced to people like you after, and so it was wild that it could go down that way. And now my dad eats this way too. It took him a little longer. I took him to True North, and that's when he watched the True North lectures and came to agree. He was already kind of eating like that because it's all my mom cooked after she figured this out. So if he wanted to eat junk, he would have had to prepare it himself, which he wasn't going to do. So now my whole family pretty much.
What are the age ranges of your parents? Where are they in age?
60s and 70s.
And so how, as you've watched them embrace this, because, you're younger and we know, younger people embrace it, older people embrace it. Have you seen the quality of their health span really remarkably improve with those, as they've embraced this way of eating and living? What have you noticed in their lives?
My mom lost a ton of weight when she started, just like I did. So that was obvious, and she just felt better like I did. I mean, we all feel the energy and the ability to move. I mean, not that, during this time I did no exercise. I made sure that it was going to be the food that showed me whether it was working or not. So I did no exercise at all during this, and I still just felt a rush of energy like never before. And for my dad, he lost a ton of weight. He got off a lot of the meds that he was having to take for like cholesterol and blood pressure. My mom never got on them, so that was good. She ended up not needing to. And so, yeah, it was a huge impact on their lives.
So the issue of use, when you began this, as you got turned on the China study, there wasn't many major pathology, but the general state of well-being you could recognize was not where you really wanted it to be. You had shortcomings that you felt you could renovate by shifting in this direction, basically.
You mean when I was doing
when you first turned on? I mean, you recognized that things weren't quite right, but you weren't dealing with like a life-threatening pathology at that point. Sometimes it takes those catastrophic events for people to say, you know what, I'm going to make this change. That's not kind of what you did. You just kind of made it because you had a general view that, hey, it wasn't really working. Things could be better. You had a sense that things could be better, basically.
Yeah, I didn't have anything really going on. I mean, I saw that things were going up. Like I said, with the cholesterol, the blood pressure, the weight was all going up. But I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. I learned a lot more about health after that. And it was really my mom's high cholesterol scare that was the motivator. But yeah, I mean, when I started eating vegan, it wasn't enough. When I actually first added a bunch of juicing, thinking that juicing was going to be this magic bullet thing. And I did feel better when I did that, but it was because I wasn't eating enough greens and vegetables and real food to begin with. And so even if you're eating crappy, if you add in calories of good things, it erases a little bit of the bad. And then I confused that for the wrong thing. So then I became kind of a juicing fanatic and was still eating meat. It's like, you don't have it, bro. Figure it out. And
well, let me ask you a question, because I know when you got into, as you made the point, you were really evaluating the impact of food and not activity, exercise. You really weren't doing that because you really wanted to get a glimpse of what the food alone would do. But did you find that as you embraced those changes and things started to improve, that we know movement is important? Human beings are meant to move, and a certain amount of activity is really crucial for us to feel well, to be well. Did you find that that was a motivator to then embrace other parts of the lifestyle a little more emphatically? Did that happen for you that way?
It did. That's a great question. I've always been very athletic. I've always enjoyed working out, with strength training. I've been a big hiker. I go on, long hikes. I've done the Grand Canyon rim to rim like half a dozen times. So it wasn't that I spent a lot of time not exercising, but I wanted to really understand the food. And I knew that if I took anything else out, so I'd have a real control group with this, then I could get a sense of it. And then as I added the athletic part of my life back in, which was, only a couple of months later, I now was able to take that big rush of energy and apply it. And I remember I went on this random hike I was gonna do because I was gonna start training again for the canyon, because I wanted to do rim to rim to rim. And I went and I hiked 30 miles one night, and I was just like, how is this possible? I haven't been training at all. I'm sure I'll be sore tomorrow, but how could I just go hike 30 miles? It makes no sense. And that was like a 10, 12-hour hike. I remember I just kept going. And I had food and I had everything, so I just kept going. And it was remarkable. You're high. You're high.
Right.
Because you realize that your whole life can now be different. And
is that a focus of your activity program now? Hiking, walking, things like that? Is that what you like to do?
Yes, I like to do strength training, which I've had a little bit of time off of, unfortunately. Though the reason is good, I had a baby.
Congrats. I didn't know that. Congrats how old is your baby now?
7 months tomorrow.
Oh, baby. Okay. Are you sleeping? You getting any sleep or what?
The sleep was impacted actually at the beginning. He was pretty good. And then it came down a bit and he woke up more. And now he gets up between 5, 6, sometimes 7. Which is fine.
I'm assuming he's still being nursed at this age? Yes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
We're very natural hygiene like that.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I'm here with Dillon Holmes. We're going to take just a short break to hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association. And now, to put a smile on the sponsors of the National Health Association, you're listening to the Health Science Podcast Show. I want to remind you to visit the National Health Association website, where you'll find incredible resources to support your healthy lifestyle, including plant-exclusive eating without added salt, oil, and sugar. Simply go to healthscience.org or nationalhealthassociation.org. Be sure to check out membership, which is $35 per year for those living within the U.S. and $55 for those living outside the U.S. You'll be amazed at all the information and benefits you'll receive. As a member, you're kept up to date on the latest evidence-based tools for health promotion. You'll receive the incomparable quarterly magazine Health Science, a beautiful 40-page advertising-free publication mailed to your home or offices, loaded with articles, recipes, inspirational stories, and interviews with world leaders in the fields of personal health, plant-based nutrition, water-only fasting, animal rights, and environmental support. And you'll receive details about life-changing events, such as the 2023 NHA Conference set for June 23 to the 25th, 2023 in Cleveland, Ohio, which will be the NHA's 75th annual NHA Conference. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and now back to the show. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast, having the really beautiful, interesting discussion with Dillon Holmes, the head of the Well Your World YouTube channel. You made a point that one of the things that turned you and your mom on was Dr. McDougall's starch solution. And it's such a cool thing because, as you know, so much of carbohydrates and starches in the plant-based have been vilified for so long, where people were so concerned that these were going to be the weight-gaining things. Don't touch a potato, don't touch grains, don't touch starches. And so that's a revelatory book in a way, because it cuts through all of that mythology, which is just such nonsense, that has really set people back. And in the work you do now, in terms of your channel and so on, do you find yourself kind of demythifying all of that nonsense a lot of the time as you go through what you do?
Sometimes I take for granted the knowledge we now have about real food, its starches. I need to play the hits more in my videos. Sometimes I tell myself that. But I feel like my audience gets that. And I hit that home. All my recipe videos, for example, obviously are very starch centered. So I guess maybe I'm in it so deep that I forget that some people are still figuring out that starches are positive, not negative. You know what I mean?
Well, you're showing by example anyway, which is a very cool thing to begin with. Well, before you jump into that, give us a little insight as to how you evolved from where you are into now wanting to reach out into this YouTube world, into this platform world, to really share the kinds of things that turn you on, that you felt were valuable. Give me a little idea of how that evolved in your own life to get to that point.
Sure. Well, I started out like many people. I found this magic bullet, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and then I've got this knowledge and I can hand it off to anybody. They don't even have to read the book. I could just tell you the secret. And now you know it. And you're obviously, with this information, you're immediately going to apply it to your own life, because why would you want to continue being overweight on all these drugs that I know you're on without knowing that you're on? And so congratulations. And as you might expect, they had no interest whatsoever. I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. It strained a lot of relationships because I was a bit of a preacher. I mean, why wouldn't I preach this? It's a no-brainer and it will save your life. And so I was going around. Where I got into trouble was trying to, push my extended family. My immediate family was already, like I was saying, pretty much on board. But then I tried to change everybody else, and I started to realize that that is a mess. It's a real mess. People, just because I'm conscientious about health does not mean that everybody else is going to be interested in taking away these things they're hooked on. And so I got to learn that the hard way, unfortunately. And then when that was happening, I thought, I got to stop taking my information to people and find a way for people to come to me, because I have this knowledge. I want to talk about it. I want to help people improve their lives, but I don't want to catch everybody at a dinner party and be like, hey, try this, because it was miserable. It broke my heart. I had no outlet. I had no ability to express myself. I felt like I had to keep it all bottled in. So I started making YouTube videos. I thought, okay, I've just done this starch solution thing. I remember my first video, still up, and I just like, this is what happened to me, and I'm gonna start making videos about it. And maybe I don't know what I'm gonna do with this thing. I'm gonna call it Well Your World, and I don't know where it'll take me. It started out as just a YouTube channel. And I felt immediately people were commenting, the subscriber count was going up. This was in 2017. And the momentum was building then, it's stronger now obviously, but it was really happening then. I felt like that was things were turning around. But I could have just been new to it. But anyway, I started making these videos and it gave me an outlet again. I felt like I could tell the people who actually wanted to hear it, and I realized that I've got to stop trying to change the world and everybody to my way of doing things and show up for the people who actually want the information, the ones that are either curious, are going through health problems and are seeking this out, the ones that are asking where do you get your protein because they actually want to understand this stuff, not because they want to make you feel bad about the way that you eat. And so as soon as I started making the videos and I was getting feedback and people were telling me, I'd wake up, I'd grab my phone and I'd see these comments on my YouTube channel, you've helped me change my life, you've helped me, and I was just like, I can't do anything else, I've got to quit my other job. And I get emotional just thinking about this when I got started, but I was in the solar industry, had my own solar business, and I'm an engineer by trade, and I knew I needed to get the exit plan figured out and start working on this. And I don't know what'll become of it, how I'll make money. Frankly, I quit solar a little early, and but I figured it out. And I just knew I needed to not. it wasn't that I wanted to spread the word, it was that I wanted to make it easier for the people that were struggling with this and that wanted the information. I'm done changing the world. I'm not an activist. I don't care how you eat. I want to help the people who want to eat better, to want to fix their health. And that was what resonated. That's what gave me the feeling like I wasn't working anymore.
Right.
And I'll never.
Well, I love in reading a little bit about what you're doing, the fact that you are really wanting to help people simplify things, because we do tend to get lost in complexity that is really not important, and we can kind of drown in that, in a sense. And the fact that when you look at going back into hygienic principles or the fundamentals to living, health by healthful living, it's not rocket science. And you tell people, like, the fact of the matter is, as you speak, it's that these very simple things just need to be set in motion. I mean, I saw that placard again the other day that says, human beings are the only creatures that need scientific studies to tell them that eating fruits and vegetables are healthy. I mean, it's really kind of a funny thing to see, but it is so true. It's like we need validation to do something that is so completely natural and beneficial. And the fact that you cut through that and just give people that opportunity to see the simplicity, what I'll call a profound simplicity, because it really is very profound, as most simple truths really are, that living this way, eating this way is going to give you the best opportunity to really express your ability to heal and be well. And that health follows by just the natural outcome of these very simple choices. So I think, I think one of the things that probably is part of that success that you've had is that people resonate with that simplicity somewhere. They may not understand all the pieces, but yet there's something just so common sense about it. And so much common sense has actually been lost when you really think about how people look at health and the choices that they make. Someone embracing a keto diet, I mean, common sense would tell you that eating a diet that's 65 to 95% fat, there's something wrong with that. And, decimating animals for high protein, there's something wrong with that. And yet that common sense is lost. And I love the way this common sense is such a part of the simplicity of what you're doing. And I think that's really fantastic. And I think people resonate with that. I wanted to touch on one other thing, because you brought it up. It's on a personal level. And I know I've seen, situations where relationships, because parties are into different mindsets, and you made the point that, you trying to connect as you were making those changes led to some, discomfort and some dissonance that went on in your life. Was that also true of your personal relationships until you really, came upon the woman that's your partner now, and how you created this love relationship around the lifestyle that you believe in? Obviously, you both believe in. So talk about that just a little bit, because I know people feel the pressure of that sometimes, especially in an age where they're trying to connect in relationships and so on. And that can be kind of something that drives people apart. And I think it sounded like you were experiencing some of that. I'd love to just talk about that briefly for people.
Yeah, I think, it's still tough. I mean, the relationships are strained. I don't know if my extended family life will ever be what it was. Why would it? Because we don't connect on an important level, but I didn't need it to. I just needed it to be a little more positive. I didn't need anybody to do what I was doing, but it just turned a little negative. But anyway, I am very fortunate that my wife eats like me. We met at a conference that was focused on how we eat. So I got lucky there, but I also thought that's how it would end up. It's especially challenging. Like I didn't have to, change the person that I was married to, which a lot of people, when they find this at an older age, they're having to change people or work with them when they're not a very supportive partner. I can only imagine that must be incredibly difficult. Much harder than having extended family members not agree with you. So I feel for that. It would be very hard for me to be with someone who doesn't eat like me, but there are a lot of people out there that are making it work, and that is very commendable. But yeah, it put a strain on things, to say the least. And I've learned that the hardest part of eating this way is the brain part, not the mechanics of preparing the food, not the chewing. It's figuring out a way to do it day in, day out without getting totally derailed. And that's where you've got to find that simplicity factor, like you were talking about, because there's a lot of information out there. It's human nature to think you just have to add something to your diet. Add it. Take these vitamins. Take this elixir, whatever it is. Do this smoothie, and then you're going to feel good. Do the juicing. You know, there's nothing wrong with juicing, but it isn't the magic bullet. It was a misunderstanding. It wasn't that the juicing that did it. It was including whole food, real food in my diet again. And so getting around the head game is, I think, the hardest part. And so I do these little plant rants on my channel, and I try to talk people through some of these challenges. We just put out a video this week that was really well received about social pressure. You know, you go to Thanksgiving and everybody starts asking you questions that they don't want to know the answers to. And if you give them a good answer, it's actually worse than if you just tell them they win and be done with it. And that's really hard for people to be the smarter person in the conversation and shut it down before you take a bunch of status from everybody and screw up your relationships in a way that you probably aren't going to be able to get back. And that's, to some extent, where I find myself with some relationships, and I've had to accept that. I wish all the time that I would have approached it differently back then, and now I talk about it to others. And sure enough, the message resonates. You know, the social pressure video, I can't believe the comments that I got from people where that message just hit them home. So.
I'm here with Dillon Holmes, the head of the Well Your World YouTube channel. Dillon, let people know how they can find you. What's the website where they need to go to follow you, to see what you're doing?
You can find us at wellyourworld.com, just like that. And we've got a lot of offerings now. We do, obviously our YouTube channel is where we started, youtube.com/wellyourworld, you'll get there. But that blossomed into a live cooking show that we do twice a month here in this very kitchen. That's why I'm sitting here, is because I just did a live cooking show on someone else's channel. And so we do a live cooking show here, and that's not just helpful because it shows people how to cook, but it also brings on a sense of community. And I've learned that with all the live streaming that I do, I think one of the most powerful things is for people to be in the chat box, just talking to each other, knowing that there are other people that do this like them, even though in their real life world, physical world, there may not be others like them, but there are others, and we're here to support you, and whether it's to be your accountability buddy or just so you know somebody's got your back when something crappy at home happens, for example.
I'm assuming that in your group and in the people that come to you and find you, you're getting people at kind of many different levels of transition with the lifestyle. How is your patience with people that feel the need to use those substitute meats and analog foods that we know are not the healthiest, but they're really part of their movement into the fold, so to speak? How do you dance with that? How do you share information about that? What's your patience with that? I'm just curious.
That's where my fascination with personality comes into play, and understanding that different people have a different way of transitioning. For me, I was addicted to kettle chips, and so having something crunchy that adhered to our way of eating was critical. I needed to replace chips, so I was going to the trouble of thinly slicing with the mandolin, the potatoes, and doing that microwave thing so you got like potato chips, making chips in the oven, which I still do regularly, but I don't do the really high maintenance stuff like making little potato chips, because eventually you just get over it. But those were my transition foods. And if somebody finds that eating a vegan junk food like the fake meats, the cheeses, whatever, if that truly is in their current diet to transition them to the healthy version, and they just need some time to get away from the real cheese and the real meat, okay, I'm not going to be negative about that, even though it's poison. I'm not afraid to tell you it's poison.
Right.
But I'm also not afraid to tell you that you're doing a good job if your goal is to continue to refine the diet until you get to your forever diet. So I think those transition foods can be helpful. I think also they can be helpful, like for me. I didn't go from a standard American meat-centric diet to this healthy whole plant food diet. I went to a junk food vegan diet first for 3 years until I finally figured it out. And that stepping stone, reading the China study, which only focused on animal protein pretty much, allowed me, and I was eating the Gardein burgers and whatever it is. And I've spent some time sitting there in that style of eating before I finally realized the next step. So that was my progression. Other people they go cold turkey, max to the max, SOS-free diet, no added salt, oil, sugar, animal products are gone. And that's what works best for their personality, because any little bite of the off-brand food is going to throw them off their course. And so I think I like to talk about those issues because there isn't one prescription for everybody on how to go from what you were doing before to what you're doing now or what you ought to be doing now. And that's where we can have these conversations about how everybody is a little bit different. Their personality plays a huge role. Not everybody can be steadfast and disagreeable and get to this and just stick to it day in, day out forever. And I respect where people are. I respect people's imperfections. I respect people's choices not to be completely perfect at their diet all the time, because, 90% is a hell of a lot better than 0. So I think there's a place for those kinds of foods, and I choose not to eat them, but I certainly don't demonize them.
And I appreciate because let's face it, a foundation of all of this is a certain amount of empathy and compassion for people for where they are, and helping them make transitions from a standpoint of love and compassion, truthfully. And I think we can still embrace that while they may be doing something that we think is not correct, while they find their way to whatever the promised land is for them. Within the context of that, I know that you've highlighted the idea that your food prep for you got to be, very simple. I mean, you weren't spending a ton of time. You could make things simple: rice, beans, whatever you make. But I gather that it also promoted you to look at a way to add something to that could make it a little bit more attractive and played into your entrepreneurial side. So talk about the evolution of how you came to create, or the idea that motivated you to create the sauces and the salad dressings and the ancillary business, the entrepreneur side of what you do, to kind of enhance people's ability to enjoy a diet that is basically SOS free and totally plant exclusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me it's all about simple. Yes, I have a food business, yes, I have a cooking show and all this, but my passion isn't with cooking. My passion is with educating, I think. So I realized that when I was eating, I love to entertain with food. I love to have people over to see how we eat, but also just to enjoy people's company and to have food while you're doing it. I like to impress people with pretty food, but I don't have a passion for it. I'm not like a chef. I don't have a chef brain where I want to learn how to turn a portobello mushroom into something that mimics some meat dish or something. Right. I don't care for any of that. But I realized, and you realize this pretty fast, that there's nothing you can eat outside of your house, pretty much. If you live in a place where they have smart people that have restaurants where you can actually eat compliant food, good on you, but most of us don't have that. I sure don't. And so it became, I'm going to have to make all of this food for myself at every meal. How can I cut corners? How can I do it fast? How can I skip various steps with this recipe? So when I transform a recipe, it's taking usually a vegan recipe, and it's making it easier and without some of the junk. And that's kind of how I design my show, is taking this like 5-step recipe and just turning it into a 2-step recipe. Are you going to know the difference? Maybe if I give you a taste test of both of them next to each other, but you're only getting one. So you're not going to notice. You're not going to notice the 2% of difference between the sauteing this for X number of minutes or just skipping that, throwing everything in the pot, heating it up to a simmer, and let it boil and eat it. And so For me, it was realizing, okay, I got to prepare all my food. How can I make this as easy as possible? But now there are nights when I don't have time. So then I started making myself products that were like shelf-stable products. The first thing I ever made for myself was a dry cheese sauce mix so that I could make mac and cheese really fast. So it was the dried russet potatoes like they use for the ready mashed potatoes, instant mashed potatoes, and the nutritional yeast, and the onion and garlic and all these things, and I put it in a jar, and then all I had to do was throw in, water pretty much. I blended it up with water, because at that time I'd put some cashews in the jar too, and then all I had to do was blend it up with water, and then I could go to the stove, boil some pasta, throw in peas at the last minute into the boiling pasta, and then strain it all out, mix it with the cheese sauce, and I've got a meal in like 7 minutes. And 9 minutes, whatever it is to boil the pasta, because that's what you're waiting on. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to show other people how to do this. And so that month, that's when I also, like I was saying, I got out of solar really early, so I'm like, I got to monetize my following. I got to find a way to give people something that they consider valuable and that they would give me money so that I can keep doing this for them and me. And so I put this cheese sauce up for sale, and I sold like $10,000 worth of this powdered cheese sauce that I was mixing up in this big food mixer. It looked like a cement mixer, but it was made for like people that coat popcorn or things like that. And I was mixing it up in this big mixer and then bagging it up and vacuum sealing it, and I had the whole cottage food license thing, and I was just doing this out of my basement, and the whole house was a complete mess. It was a disaster. But what I learned in that moment, that people they bought me out, and I realized that I was gonna have to like make this for the next 18 hours straight, or else I'm not gonna follow through with my commitment. And so I figured that out and got some help, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what I did for myself was needed by others. And then the next month I came out with an instant gravy mix, because one of my favorite things to eat was mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and mushroom gravy. And so I came out with the same idea and a gravy mix. 2 months later, same thing happened again. Sold $10,000 of this in the first month. I was like, oh my gosh, what was I waiting for? And so since then, it's been, where are the other things that will help people to save time, to save energy, to not have to prepare from scratch every single meal, every day, to allow them to run out to their kid's soccer game and eat a quick thing. So I made some salad dressings all of my products are SOS free, no added salt, oil, sugar. And they're also overt fat free, so like I don't put nuts in it. If you want to add nuts now with my cheese sauce, I'll pour the cheese sauce into the blender, and then I'll throw in a handful of cashews out of the freezer. So it all just came to, what would people want? What would I want to make it faster? And so that I don't have to cook every night, because I'm not passionate about coming in here to the kitchen every day. I'm passionate about showing it off during a video or a cooking show or entertaining for friends or family or whatever, but I don't have a passion to be in this kitchen all day long every day. Here we are sitting in the kitchen. But
well, let's be realistic. Most people don't have that time. So I think the truth is, with work and families and having something that's expedient, that's high quality, that gets them on staying on track, that's enjoyable and tasty. And I will say, you were kind to send me some of the product, and some of what you sent me was incredible. So are you still involved with a lot of your time making that yourself, or do you have a staff of people that do that? How is that put together now?
Now I have a co-packer, so I just have to come up with the formula, and then I go there and we do the first batch together, and we add a little of this and that, and then it's a formula after that. So it's pretty
with
slow.
all the stuff that you're doing, I want to ask just one as we get toward the end of this. What is your connection or your mindset, or what drove you to getting connected to the National Health Association? I mean, with everything you have going on, you're on the board of directors of this incredible organization too. So what drives that connection and passion for that organization for you?
Well, when I was in the really nerding out phase, like I said, I'm an engineer, which comes with a level of nerdiness that not everybody possesses. And I was really digging into watching other YouTube channels, and that's when I was exposed to Dr. Alan Goldhammer at True North. And I actually, and water fasting, and learning about this, magical, simple way of helping the body to heal. And again, couldn't believe it. Just like with the starch solution, there's no way. There's no way. So I went to True North, and I did a week-long water fast, and I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this. I feel so good. I haven't eaten for 7 days, and I feel like I'm on top of the world. And so that is when I actually came across a copy of the Health Science magazine, and then of course Mark Huberman at NHA emailed me immediately after I signed up. I got the magazine, I went to my room at True North, I signed up as a member of the NHA. Mark reached out to me, I'm like, well, this is how I found you. It was a cooking demo at True North, and I got this magazine, and then I went to the conference. Did I go to the conference that year? Anyway, I went to the conference shortly thereafter. No, it would have been the following year, in 2018. And I loved what they were doing. I enjoyed all of the content. I loved that it was a nonprofit that wasn't just trying to sell tickets. And I wanted to get involved. So I gave them a big, long email about my feedback about the conference. And they invited me to be a board member. And I was like, well, that's pretty neat.
Fantastic. So as we wind this down, do you have any final words of advice or information you'd like to share with the people watching this?
I would say that health comes from healthful living, the NHA slogan. And if you can figure out how to simplify it, you can figure out how to stick to it. And if you can figure out how to work with other people, the non-believers in your life, then you can figure out how to find peace in your own mind and your heart to stick to it. To find community elsewhere, such as online, the whole purpose of our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, and that'll just make it a little bit easier. And so join us, and we'll help you to simplify this, because it's not all about doing the same 10 things every day and adding all these nutrients. It's about getting rid of the weights. Get rid of the weight on your life and find a way to make it easy so you can do it every day. Do that, and you'll get there.
I want to thank Dillon Holmes for really taking the time today to, give us his words of wisdom and some advice, and just his beautiful time and insight. And I encourage you to follow Dillon at his Well Your World YouTube video program. The notes, the location for that will be in the show notes. And I want to truly thank all the listeners out there, because without you, I couldn't do any of this. We couldn't do this. I want to really express my gratitude for you being part of this incredible active community. My name is Dr. Frank Sabatino. I'm the host of the Health Science Podcast. On behalf of the NHA, I bid you good night, and I really look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today, and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.